Hola mundo. Somos Anonymous. Primero decir que el proyecto Solar Warden empezó en la etapa del presidente USA Ronald Reagan. Los avistamientos ovni empezaron desde que se tiene conocimiento de la historia de la humanidad. En el 2001, un hacker llamado Gary Mackinnon utilizó una serie de técnicas inteligentes para hackear varias computadoras del gobierno, incluyendo a ordenadores de la NASA y de la Marina estadounidense. Su propósito original para hackear las computadoras de Estados Unidos fue a buscar datos ocultos sobre la existencia de dispositivos de la energía libre, o punto cero, le dijo a Wired en una entrevista de 2006. En sus viajes digitales que hizo Mackinnon, supuestamente descubrió una hoja de cálculo Excel con una lista de nombres de oficiales no terrestres. Otro documento fue catalogado como transferencias, flota a flota, según una entrevista del año 2006 del Proyecto Camelot. Mackinnon fue incapaz de averiguar los nombres de los oficiales de los buques de la Armada y creía que eran de humanos que se encontraban fuera del planeta Space Marine. Si nos fijamos en la literatura que nos da la agencia DARPA Defensa Agencia de Proyectos de Investigación y Avanzado en el momento y en los últimos años se trata del dominio del espacio, que es la última frontera, dijo Mackinnon al Proyecto Camelot. Por lo tanto, creo que es natural que quieren controlar el espacio y desarrollar una fuerza espacial permanente, en total secreto, pero creo que lo más probable de este proyecto es el uso de la tecnología por ingeniería inversa de extraterrestres. Mackinnon dijo a Wired que él estaba en el proceso de tener una visualización de forma remota de la imagen de un ovni en un ordenador de la NASA en el edificio 8 del Centro Espacial Johnson cuando fue descubierto. Algunos meses más tarde, en marzo de 2002, las autoridades se presentaron en la puerta de su casa, se le imputan cargos por hacer hacking de gravedad en el Reino Unido y él se enfrentó a 70 años de prisión y $2 millones en multas. Pero en los años siguientes a su descubrimiento, la solicitud de extradición del gobierno de Estados Unidos quedó en el limbo hasta que fue finalmente abandonado. El nombre de Solar Warden es un término que se refiere genéricamente a la flota espacial ultra secreta. Es claro, que actualmente no se sabe dónde exactamente se originó el nombre de este proyecto secreto. Si existe el programa, se requeriría de una enorme cantidad de capital para construir sus flotas. El año pasado, el presupuesto negro de los Estados Unidos para programas secretos a docenas de agencias era de $52.6 mil millones, según el Washington Post. En 2011, el gobierno de Estados Unidos gastó aproximadamente $718 mil millones más en la defensa nacional y la seguridad internacional. Por supuesto, gran parte se fue a hacer la guerra contra el terrorismo. Actualmente, diversas ramas militares del gobierno de Estados Unidos, todos tienen sus propios comandos espaciales, tales como el Comando Espacial de la Fuerza Aérea y Espacio de la Marina y el Comando Naval del Sistema de Guerra, SPAWAR. Estos departamentos tienen sitios web públicos y ayudan a coordinar las fuerzas militares en el suelo, en el aire y en el mar. No está claro si estos departamentos pueden estar vinculados con el llamado Proyecto Solar Warden, o si este supuesto proyecto se separa en su propio departamento encubierto y aislado. A continuación les dejaremos una entrevista hecha de Gary Mackinnon, donde se habla del tema. ¿Ustedes qué creen? ¿Hay una flota naval encima de nuestro planeta Tierra? ¿Es posible todo esto? Danos tu opinión. Tu opinión es importante. Sin más nos despedimos diciéndoles algo sumamente importante. El conocimiento es libre y usted tiene derecho a ser informado. Somos Anonymous. Somos Legión. No perdonamos. No olvidamos. Esperadnos.
I'm here with Gary Mackinnon, and we're here to talk about his possible extradition to the United States. For some hacking that he's done, and some investigation he's also done on the part of UFOs and disclosure. So Gary, maybe you can tell me what it is that the U.S. government is really sort of on about in regard to you, and your perspective on it.
The main thing that concerns me, I've made full and frank admissions all the way down to police interviews, that yes, I did obtain unauthorized access to these systems. But they're piling on these ridiculous damage claims. And I've since found out that for it to be worth a year in prison in America for an extradition case, it has to be worth at least $5,000 damage, because it comes under cybercrime. So, as if by magic, lo and behold, every machine I was on, I'm accused of causing exactly $5,000 worth of damage to. So it's patently untrue. And in my opinion, and the opinion of others more well-informed than me, the pressure they're bringing to bear is more to do with where I've been and what I may have seen.
Okay, so yeah, I found that very interesting that they were actually claiming damage, because my understanding is you were on a dial-up modem and that you didn't even download files. So how is it that you actually did any damage?
They've got no explanation. I mean, they just claim it. And under this new extradition law, you don't have to provide any evidence, which is ridiculous. And also, it hasn't been signed on your side of the water. Congress, Senate hasn't ratified it. So at the moment, it's a treaty with only one signature.
Okay. And you had one hearing, and when was that exactly?
The last one was, I think, in the middle of May or towards the end of May, I'm not sure.
Uh-huh. And you have another one coming up in July, is that right?
No hearing scheduled as yet. We've got till June the 21st to make representations to the Home Secretary. And then after which time he'll make his decision as to whether or not the extradition is allowable. And then if he decides that it is allowable, which I'm sure he will, then I can go in the appeals process.
Okay, and so once you're in the appeals process, you're still safe over here, so to speak, in terms of they actually can't do anything to you yet. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, I've been on bail now, £5,000 security for months and months, and since before that, well, for 4 years since the arrest. So
for 4 years?
Yeah,
You've been
March
on...
2002 they arrested me.
Wow. Okay, so maybe you could explain exactly what you're in for, or, up for, I guess might be a better word.
Apparently it's 7 counts of intentional or malicious damage and unauthorized access, each count carrying 10 years maximum each. And previously the American government had tried to do some deals with me, whereby they said if you don't force us to go through extradition and just come across of your own free will, then we'll give you only 3 to 4 years in prison, most of which you can serve in your own country after the first 6 months or 12 months. I said, fine, that sounds great, give me that in writing. Guess what happened? I didn't get it in writing. So I said no to the various deal offers. So it looks like on paper, they said to me, if you don't accept the deal, we'll prosecute you to the max. That's a verbatim quote from Ed Gibson, who was the attaché of the US Embassy in London at the time. And to me, that's not a deal. A deal is something arrived at after reasonable discussion between 2 or more parties.
Absolutely.
Not saying, here it is, if you don't take it, we'll prosecute you to the max. So yeah, I think they do want to try and push for the full 60, 70 years in prison, which is ridiculous considering they had blank passwords, and in other words, no passwords.
Right. So let's get into that a little bit. You basically, I don't know if you want me to use the word hack. I don't know if you consider yourself a hacker or did at the time.
I never did consider myself a hacker at the time. And also, basically, all we're doing, because it was an administrator-level account, let's not forget, with full control of the local machine, with a blank password, so it was almost like logging on.
So let's back up one minute here, and exactly what were you looking for when you were doing this?
At first, I was looking for anything to do with UFOs. As I got more into the subject and listened to more serious talk and discussion about the subject, and was introduced to the Disclosure Project, and realised that there were 400 witness testimonials from people that had worked from everything in civilian air traffic control up to military radar operators, right up to men and women in charge of whether or not to launch nuclear missiles. I thought these are surely credible people. And the whole suppressed technology thing of it, which kind of grabbed my humanitarian side. I thought, crikey, we're having wars over oil, we're burning fossil fuels, polluting the environment. We have old age pensioners dying in Britain because they can't afford to heat themselves because the fuel bills are so high. So I thought, why on earth is this technology being sat on? I can see perhaps some of the arguments that may be forwarded, what if terrorists had free energy, or terrorists had anti-gravity, or what if terrorists had guns? Everything's dual use.
Sure.
Yeah, if you protect it, make it tamper-proof, anything, but just get it out to the public, because surely everyone should have it.
Okay, so, but as far as the hacker community, you said, I believe, in some of the things I read that you came across a lot of other sort of interested parties that were investigating the same places you were, and were aware that they were blank passwords and were able to get into via the administrative sites. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I would have been surprised if there wasn't anyone else, because it wasn't even really a hack to get into. It was just large-scale phishing for blank passwords. Some of these places, you know, were pretty special places. There weren't places that you would think wouldn't have firewalls or blank passwords.
And this was what year that you were involved in this?
2000, 2001.
Mm-hmm. So it's not that long ago, so computer systems should have been, especially for government and military and NASA, you would think they would be covered.
Absolutely.
For things like that.
In fact, I think they're supposed to be federal guidelines, you know.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, you did them a favor. Isn't that true?
Yeah, you could look at it like that, because I'm sure, I mean, the other connections that were there, you know, Turkey, Holland, Germany, all across the world, you see the IP address list of who's connected to the machine, and you can look it up and, you know, find out which countries they're in, and even which businesses own the IPs. And I don't know whether that was foreign governments, you know, it could have been Al-Qaeda, or it could have been someone else just like me, who's just snooping around, who knows.
That's a very interesting point. So you've got these administrators, basically, that got found out because of what you did. I mean, is that what we can assume?
No, it's good to clarify that it's the administrator account. A lot of the time on a corporate network or a large organisation like the Army or the NASA, isn't actually used. There isn't an administrator.
Oh.
But it's a built-in account, so you can't delete it. You can rename it. But that's for, say, if someone wanted to do something system-wide across the whole network, they would use that account to log in remotely, because that gives you full control over the machine. But it doesn't actually refer to a particular person.
Oh, so no particular worker involved in that maintains the site or anything?
That's correct, yeah. Although obviously they must have IT staff that look after things.
Right, and didn't you encounter one such person, or was he an IT guy that on the other end?
Yeah, he was a network engineer. Because I had graphical remote control of the machines, literally like sitting on the chair opposite the screen, opposite the monitor. I think I must have got the time zone wrong, or he was working late hours or whatever, but he obviously saw the mouse moving across the screen. And next thing I know, WordPad flashes up, and someone types, "Who are you?" And you know, I panicked, didn't want to get caught. Thought very quickly on my feet and turned around my own investigations into an explanation to answer him. And I said, I'm from Nifonet Security, which is the non-classified internet protocol and router network. And I've discovered some unauthorized scanning coming from this machine. I'm here to investigate it. And he immediately, as a good employee of mine, human nature, you know, tried to impress me with his knowledge and showed me this, did a virus scan. And pretty much showed me that the machine was clean.
Wow.
And then moved along.
And he was never the wiser, or because I know that this was linked
Maybe
somehow to, well, right. But I mean, you know, my understanding was it was linked somehow to you actually getting caught, what, a month later, or I don't know how much longer?
I can't actually remember when that incident took place. You know, I was doing this every night, all night, practically for 2 years. Not really looking after myself very much. So dates and things are a bit mangled.
So this was a real passion of yours, in other words?
Oh, yeah.
And would you say, I mean, was the passion for information related to UFO and hidden technology? Was that kind of your passion, or would you say, what would you say is your passion in that regard?
I passionately believe that we should all have this technology. And not so much, obviously, you know, if you could confirm the existence of extraterrestrials and their contact with us, then that would be good. But to me, it was more important to have this free energy system.
Okay. So what did you find out?
About free energy, and
about,
unfortunately, not at all. But the UFO thing, as far as I'm concerned, it may sound circumstantial to some, but as far as I'm concerned, it's proven. As part of the disclosure project, there was Donna Hare, a NASA photographic scientist, who had up to secret clearance, was in Building 8 of Johnson Space Center, she says in her testimony, and that one of her colleagues was doing some photographic work, invited her over to look at it, and she saw high-res satellite imagery, maybe half a K above the treetops. I think it was like a white disc, and she at first thought, oh, it's a blob in the emulsion, you know, some kind of fault with the photographic process. And he said, well, look, you know, blobs in the emulsion don't have perfectly formed shadows going in the same direction as the trees, etc., etc. All the detail was there. And she basically was saying that they had this whole place in Building A for airbrushing out UFOs on a regular basis, because they then, you know, sell on their imagery to universities and the like. And having been all over other NASA installations already, I assumed the blank password scanning method would work the same in Johnson Space Center, and it did. Once I was in there, I used various network commands to strip out the machines that were in Building 8, and got onto those. And the very first one I was on literally has what she said. I can't remember if it was filtered and raw, processed and unprocessed, but it was definitely folders whereby there was a transformation in the data taking place between one and the other. These folders were full of images in a proprietary NASA format, or in a format I'd never seen before, no JPEGs or GIFs. They're also 200-300 megabytes in size, and being on a 56k dial-up modem, there's no way I was going to download it. It's like 5 minutes per megabyte. So what I did, the remote control program that gives you graphical control of the machine, turned the resolution right down, turned it down to I think 4-bit color. And then on the desktop of the NAS machine, navigated to the folder, double-clicked on the first image. The application launches, the image comes up on the screen, but it's still very, very slow. And what I saw, I was hoping to see exactly what she was describing, you know, saucers and very definite imagery. And what instead I saw was, I assume it was the Earth. This is in sort of shades of grey, but you had the Earth's hemisphere, I think about 2/3 of the screen. And then halfway between the top of the hemisphere and the bottom of the picture, there was a classic sort of cigar-shaped object, but with, you know, sort of golf ball domes, geodesic domes, above, below, and this side, and I assume the other side as well, close to the left and right as well, and with very slightly flattened cigar ends. No seams, no rivets, no sort of telemetry or antennae or anything like that, and I just had a feeling of not being man-made. There was none of the sort of signs of man.
So in essence, it was a craft, is what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And
when I first saw the top half of it, I thought, oh, well, it's, you know, a boring satellite picture or something. But as more of the thing was revealed, it was obvious it wasn't like any satellite I'd ever seen.
Wow.
And I've been space mad since I was about 14, so I've seen lots of pictures of satellites.
Okay, so you knew what you were looking at to some degree. So basically, did you feel, I guess during those 2 years that you were doing this investigation, threatened by what you were doing? Were you, in other words, I mean, technically you got caught out by one guy, right? Was that the only time?
No, I mean, that guy, that network engineer sort of saw me but didn't realise that I shouldn't have been there. The chap that actually caught me was in NASA when this photograph was about 3/4 of the way down on the screen, and you see the mouse move, he right-clicks the local area network connection icon, chooses disconnect, bash, that's me. And that's why it was such a strange moment. It was triumphant in a way. I thought I've completely corroborated what Donna Hare has said, you know, on my own. But then got caught in the very same moment.
Well, when you say you got caught, I mean, how did he catch you? I understand he closed down the network so you couldn't continue to visit. But does that mean he actually knew who you were at that point, or did it take them a lot more investigation to find out actually where you came from?
It took them a while longer, I think a good while longer, although I'm not sure how much longer, because again, I can't remember if that was fairly near the end of my investigations. I think that may have been late 2001, and I was arrested in March 2002. But what happened, I'm told, is that NASA and the various shared information, which I think these bodies should do more often, and don't do it enough, just like law enforcement, and realised that whoever had been in the systems was using, you know, the same tools, the same program, the same method of entry, and I think NASA knew it was from a United Kingdom IP address. And this is the thing, I wasn't a professional hacker, so I wasn't always covering my tracks and stuff, or thinking properly. I was, you know, being in time zones when people were still working in the offices and such. So